Welcome to the Managing the Smart Mind podcast with your host, Coach Kramer. This is episode 68, How to be a Brilliant Autistic CEO with Maisie Hill, part 2. Hello, smart human. Welcome to the second part of my interview with autistic icon, author, badass entrepreneur Maisie Hill. And if you haven't listened to the first part yet, I highly recommend you do that first, right? It will all make much more sense. Now, in this second part, we dive into entrepreneurship a bit deeper, right? We talk about finding the red thread in your career and work, even actually, especially when you pivot often. We also look at how Maisie is currently using Formula One as an inspiration for her business, right? How much she's learning from observing the way Formula One is organized. We talk about the pros and cons of pivots and shiny objects, how she works with her team, how she has designed the business to let her do what she excels at, how her director of operations keeps her in check, why it's useful to sometimes go to the dark side, the importance of rigor when it comes to craft, and working with nature rather than against it. Enjoy the second part. Right. And I think that's what I also love about you is, smart people tend to, especially if they're aware of it, they'll be like, oh my God, I learned this in this arena. Now, how does it apply there? Right. And maybe nobody's ever thought of that. Or even if they have, it could be almost unconscious. Like for me, getting a black belt in Aikido, even after I stopped training, like all the work I've done with energy and in Aikido, I think I started working as a trainer, giving workshops and teaching. And all of a sudden I realized I am amazing with groups, right? I feel the energy of the group and I know exactly what they need, right? In the moment, I know exactly whether to give more to, release the reins, all the things. And I thought, that's my fucking Aikido training.
Yes.
Right? That's all these years on the mat, like learning to work with energy. Hello.
Yeah.
Right. So it took me a while, but yeah.
No, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
And it's that, like at the moment, my current things that I'm hyper focusing on are horse riding. So I've just started riding again, doing lessons.
How's your butt doing?
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. And Formula One.
Oh my God. No.
So we discovered, because I recently had COVID and Paul had it as well, my partner. So we, as you do, what are we going to watch on Netflix as we're going through this? And I love watching sports documentaries, athletes of all kinds. I have no interest in watching sports, but the documentaries about the athletes,
how do
I
they
love.
Yeah, to top like peak performance.
And like the real, competitive, because I'm very competitive and ambitious and things. So I love that whole vibe. So we started watching Drive to Survive, which is a series, there's 5 series on Netflix about Formula One. I'm obsessed, absolutely obsessed with it. And I'm just like, well, this is just a fun thing for me to enjoy. But then I was getting coached yesterday and I'm totally bringing in things from Formula One into my business.
Right.
And it's just like creating these profound shifts in how I'm seeing my role, working with my team, delegation, communication, preferences, all of those things.
Oh, I love it. That's so perfect. Okay. And so good for people to like realize that all the things that you think are like, you may even be asking like, why the hell am I interested in this thing? Why do I keep getting so distracted all the time? Right. I think a lot of people say like, oh God, there's another shiny object. What if this is actually insanely useful?
Yeah.
I
mean, that's the thing. I've sat there and watched episode after, literally done like 4.5 seasons in the last 2 weeks, which, pretty impressive. And it's caused a huge shift. for me, like the way that, you know, I've used that particularly, you know, with what we do in terms of coaching and things. It's like, oh, I just love it. But
So
that's
what has
the
it
thing.
shifted for you with your team? I'm curious about that as well. Like, and especially again for the people like, oh, the solopreneurs who are thinking about hiring people and working with other people, or the people who are,
Yeah.
you know, in corporate and are in teams but have a hard time maybe delegating. I don't
Yes.
know.
Yeah. So this is ongoing work for me, for sure, an area of growth. I've done a lot of work on it, you know, already, and had, you know, a lot of shifts. But I just realized, as my business has grown and we work with more and more contractors, towards the end of last year, I was really struggling communication wise. And, you know, just disappearing on people, not replying, it changing the timeline that we've agreed that we're going to be working on something together. And I just, it's like, that's not my wheelhouse anyway. Like, it's not, I don't want to be communicating with other people all the time, because I don't do that in any area of my life. So why would I set my business up this way? But lo and
Okay,
behold,
hang
I
on. I'm
had.
going to pause you there because that is like a great question, right? If you're
Yeah.
doing stuff that you wouldn't do, like, or you don't prefer not to do in the rest of your life, why would you set your business up in a way that you have to do that?
Well, this is the thing. So I think I had set it up. I think it's one of those, I didn't recognize how much of it I was doing. Like, I just hadn't clocked it. There was just always other things I was focused on, and things. And it was only when I was like, okay, there's this person, there's this. And I was like, whoa, this is a lot of people to be chatting to about
Managing,
things.
yeah.
Yeah. And then, and it dawned on me, oh, people are actually employed to only do this, to communicate with people. And that's when I was like, whoa, so I'm doing my job as the founder, as the coach, as the, you know, the author.
Yeah.
It's actually 3 jobs already. And then I'm expecting myself to communicate with all these people, which is actually what someone else could be doing. And then that's when I was like, okay, I think it's time to hire a director of operations.
Perfect. Right.
Who, you know, would do all of those things. So now that's the setup that we've been implementing, and we just, you know, hiring a new assistant and things at the moment. But the Formula One stuff that's really helped me is when the Formula One drivers, for each race, they have a qualifying round, and then they have the actual race. So that's like 2 things they need to do every week for half the year, let's say, right? But when they're out there, they have to be able to perform at that level. And if they don't, everything falls down. And then the rest of their week is about them taking care of themselves and getting the support that they need, so that when they get on the track and they're in the car, they can do what their job is.
Yes.
Right? When they're in the car, they're not communicating with 10 people, the engineers, the mechanics, you know,
kind of focused on other stuff.
Yeah. So they only deal with like the person on the end of the mic, and there's the team principal there. And then, you know, the communication is disseminated to the other people and what have you. And it was just, you know, when you see something so clearly like that, it's like, oh, this is just what these guys do. This is the setup. I severely doubt any of those drivers is feeling shame.
Right. About not doing
about
everything.
that setup, or about that they are,
I should change my own tires.
Yeah, exactly. Or quote unquote that they're only working for those hours when they're in the car. And I just noticed, there's places where I think even though don't get me wrong, still a long list of other things that I do in the business.
Yeah.
But like this idea, like, well, can I be performing at this level and do, as I did this week on Monday, do a coaching call at 9, finish at 10 and go horse riding at 10:30. You know, it's like that.
Yeah.
Like acclimatizing to life can be like this.
Yes. And not exactly, not the guilt that especially women are prone to, like, but I should also clean my house, right? Do all the things.
Oh my gosh. One of the best things I've done is hire a cleaner, Lisa, and she comes 3 times a week.
That's amazing. I love that.
Which is amazing. And I had to coach for about 2 years to be able to do it, because my mum was a cleaner, I was a cleaner. Like I felt a lot of, we're not the people who have cleaners, we are the cleaners.
Yeah. I used to work as a cleaning lady as well. So it took me years as well, right? To overcome that sort of like, but I cannot, how can I? No, I can't. Yes, I can.
Yeah. And now we have her. It's just like amazing. Yeah. So that's the thing, is like also it's not just in professional life that we could do with the support. It's also home life and things as well. And really just thinking, what does exquisite support, like an exquisite level of self-care and support, look like?
100%. And I was just thinking, one of the metaphors I use with clients is, I asked them, like, okay, if you were like Lady Gaga or some super talent and you had a talent manager, what would your talent manager say if they caught you doing this thing?
Yes.
Right? You're supposed to be getting ready for the fucking stage.
Yeah. I had this realization myself as well at one point when I was like, no, I'm the talent. Like literally, I go out on stage, like I don't need to be showing people to their seats as well, or like checking their tickets or getting them their drinks and
making sure
like
everybody feels good, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's fine.
But it's also because when I do that, not only do I prevent myself from excelling in the things that I'm meant to be doing, I also really interfere with the people who I work with, who I pay to do that job. And, you know, it's basically like, is what I'm doing not good enough?
Yeah.
You know,
exactly. And why the hell are you doing my job? Right? What is your problem?
Yes.
And by the way, for all the people who are thinking like, oh my God, that is so ridiculously privileged, yada, yada, yada. Yes and no, right? I mean, of course, you need to have a level of income that allows you to arrange for this support.
Yeah.
But if you're thinking women aren't allowed to just focus on one thing they're amazing at, or even men, right? If you have thoughts about that, you really want to wonder why, right? Why is it not okay? For example, if you're a speaker on a stage, and focus on that and do that really well, like twice a week, and have all the other stuff taken care of. And we can, of course, we could have a long discussion about why some work is paid way less than some other work. We'll save that for some other time, right? But all the judgment around like, oh my God, how can you just do that and not all the other things? I think there's so much collective, guilt and confusion we have around that. Like, how we should organize work and that we should be everything for everyone all the fucking time, which is just not possible.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, is there are things that are easier for me that I feel a lot of confidence around, like writing a book, speaking on stage, you know, like all of those things. But there's like what we could describe as smaller things that are a huge issue for me, because I don't have the executive functioning to be able to do them, or, you know, I lose the ability to talk. So that rules out the possibility of certain things. You know?
Yes.
And so there really are places where I do need someone else to do things, or they're not going to get done. And then that does usually have consequences, not just for me, but for other people as well.
Yeah. And for what you're trying to do in the world.
Yeah.
Yep. So good. And listen, this whole sort of Formula One, is there another thing where that is influencing your business, or is it mainly how you're running the team?
I think how I'm running the team, but also it's just I'm probably going to do it. I've been thinking, I'm going to do a whole podcast episode about the lessons I'm learning from it.
Totally should.
But I think one of the things is just the how long they're willing to feel frustration before getting to a win.
Oh, that's so good.
Not in terms of willing, like, oh, this feels so great.
Yeah.
But just that continued, because there's so many opportunities for failure.
Yeah.
Right. The car manufacturing isn't quite right. The design isn't right. You get a puncture, the brakes fail, someone bumps into you. Like, there's just an astronomical number.
Totally like running a business.
Yeah. Of things that can go wrong.
Yes.
But when it goes right, it goes so right. And it's, you're flying and you're in flow and like all of those things. But like some of these teams, it's been years, like 2 years, 3 years, 5 years since they got points, since they had pole position on the track, like all of these things, and they keep going. Like the level of resilience is amazing. And I think also seeing how some of the drivers are just like, this team that I've got a contract with aren't actually a good fit for me. And like being willing to roll the dice again.
Yeah. And change it all.
Yeah.
And I love also what you're saying about the iteration. And this is what sometimes I get very sad when I see people have like plans to do things and they never start. And it's basically, where the rubber meets the road. Sorry, couldn't help myself. Where you start learning, oh my God, next iteration, this has to change. Next iteration, this has to change. And you make a list, you have your next iteration, and it's so much better. And it's better and better and better. Like over the months, over the years, you keep optimizing because that's how our brains work, right? That's what they fucking love. To like, oh, how can this be even better? Or how can I fix this problem? How can I eliminate this obstacle, and so on and so forth? And there's so much joy, which I think is so underrated, in that really slow, like those tiny optimizations. And then, all of a sudden you're like, I fucking built something beautiful, right? And it's out there.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that I've been thinking about the last few days, particularly, is just the importance for me of working, bringing more speed into how I do things, because I outgrow myself very quickly.
Yes.
And so there's things that were kind of initiated like last summer, other people have done work on them, and then, kind of getting to the next stage of development. And I'm like, it's like 9 months ago since I had that idea.
Yeah, that was a whole different
human and now being, I'm right? Like already like, I don't know, are we still going to do this thing? Because it feels
old. I think this is actually a massive challenge for very smart business owners. There's especially if you don't, as you shouldn't, don't do all your own stuff. You basically have a project team or whatever. If they don't act on it like within a couple of weeks, this idea, you're either going to forget about it or you're on to like the next 20 things.
Yeah.
And you're going to want to pivot or do something completely different. And then they're going to be sad, mad, or whatever, because they worked on this. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what is really great, I think, having Beck, my director of operations, because she was my first virtual assistant back before the first book came out and any of that. And then she left to be on maternity leave for a couple of years, and then she's come back in the more senior role. And she's very good. She's very smart as well, because I'm like the visionary, like, got this idea, let's do it. And she is able to be like, well, yeah, love it. That's great. Here's what's going to happen. If we do this thing, this thing's going to be affected.
Exactly, right? This is going to go or whatever.
We're going to have to change this, and this will need to happen too. Are you cool with that? I'm like, perfect. No, yeah. Forget that plan, because it is just that. I think when you come up with ideas all the time, it is being like, actually, I don't have to execute on all of these ideas. I can just enjoy having a creative mind that comes up with ideas.
100%.
Although still to this day, and I will go into this saying I'm not vegan. I have never been vegan or interested in a raw diet. I know people love those things, not for me. I love the Wu-Tang Clan. Love like a bit of 90s hip hop. There's this song, the lyrics are like, yeah, baby, I like it raw. And I still, in my mind, I'm like, man, if I was a like vegan raw chef and I wanted a website, my business would be, yeah, baby, I like it raw.
100%.
So I still I'm like, but that's the thing, is like, can you allow your brain to come up with ideas for the fun of having ideas?
Yeah, for the possible universe, right? You get to like enjoy that possible universe for a couple of seconds, or maybe a couple of hours, or maybe even you store it and you revisit it from time to time, as you're doing now. You don't actually have to go create it to make it real.
Yeah. And I mean, the beauty of what we do as coaches as well is like, there's so many conversations we get to have with clients, colleagues, peers, you know, amazing humans all around us. We just get to have fun, you know, through our job as people are creating things in their own lives as well.
Exactly. So, and we get to witness that.
Yeah.
That is just amazing. So how are you keeping it interesting for you now? Like how you're kind of, can I say pivot or what? I mean, tell us what's happening.
So now I think of it like, you know, when you're going through that pivot, it's a bit like a pendulum swing. Like you're all the way over one end and then you swing all the way over the other way. And then you kind of just go back and forth a bit. And it's like the pendulum swing isn't so severe. So I was all the way over here with hormones, and I was like all the way over with, no, don't ask me anything more about estrogen.
Please, no.
And then, you know, swung back over. So now I'm in a place where I'm up for talking about hormones and the cycle, but only in the way that interests me. I'm not interested in getting into symptoms and treatment strategies and things like that. I am interested in how does it influence how you feel, how you behave, you know, and considering that. And I think I definitely had a question in my mind recently of like, how long will I have the membership for? Because it's been running for 3.5 years now.
Right.
And it was just like that, you know, you're kind of questioning, but it's a good questioning. It's like you're interrogating yourself.
Yeah. And
kind of, you know, to begin with, I was like, oh God, don't ask yourself this question. This is a bad.
Right. Don't even go there with your brain.
Taboo. Don't do this. You got this thing that's like really great. Why would you want to get rid of it? But I was like, I kind of was like, oh no, don't. But then I was like, no, let's just answer that question.
Yeah, let's just go to the dark side.
Yeah, let's go to the dark side. Exactly. And where I got to with it is this never gets old.
Right.
Because it doesn't. Like when I do a call, when I look at the weekly wins thread, when I see how my clients are using the resources, it never gets like that transformation. It never gets old. And so that's where I can really use mindsets that's the beauty of what we do. Like
exactly.
We never know what our client's going to come with. We don't know where we're going to end up in a session. There's so many unknowns. I think that's why we stand out as fantastic coaches, because we're very comfortable with that unknown.
Yes, we fucking love it. right?
Like,
For
we don't
anything.
need to know what's going to happen or what someone's coming with.
Yeah.
You know, and for other people, brains work differently, you know, different trajectories and all of those things.
Totally fine. Yep.
Nothing wrong with that. But I think there is always that newness.
Yeah. I think it's the same with teaching, right? Like, I am also addicted to teaching. I think it also goes for
Me
most
too.
teachers, right?
Yeah.
Like, when you see that light in some, you know, people's eyes light up when they get it. It's the same in coaching. You're like, this is the best, right? I do this for free any day,
Yes.
any fucking day, because it's so good. And you see them light up, and they're just the joy of having a new insight, or of letting go of something they've held onto for way too long, right? Or just one of my favorites, like the dominoes, right? That'll be one thing that topples over, and then you can see this like slow roll the dominoes, and their mind just being completely blown, and you're like, yeah, baby.
Yeah. But I think this is also what I really respect and admire about your approach to the profession, is that that need for the craft to be rigorous.
Yes. We're not just having a chat.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that also suits our brains well, because we're like, what else is there? How else can I do this? How can I make this better? Like, coming back to that principle of like that 1% change all the time. Of like,
right.
well, what if I do, you
constantly
know,
optimizing. Yes. Yeah, for sure. And I think if you're not doing that as a coach or a practitioner, I mean, first of all, it's going to be very boring for you, but also you're doing such a disservice because you're getting all these data about what works and what doesn't work. I mean, why the hell would you not use that?
I know.
Right?
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense. I love that. Okay, so the new book. I mean, can you tell us about it, or is it?
I can't. This is the first time I've publicly said there is a third book.
Oh my God. Okay. Do we need to edit this out?
No, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Okay. But yeah, there is a third book. I'm working on it. It's going to be great.
So good. Oh my God. I love it. Okay, listen, one more question I would love to ask you. How, apart from like sort of layering things, as in, okay, I've got acupuncture, now I'm going to layer in this other thing, called coaching or whatever, or learn everything about, you know, hormones, the cycle, bringing in another layer that keeps things interesting. Is there anything you do like from a very different through a very different lens to keep things interesting? For example, like I sometimes have to go to a different location to change things up, or I switch a desk, or do you have stuff like that, or can you basically work anywhere on anything?
I can pretty much work anywhere on anything. I do. You think about that.
Yeah, and while you were thinking about it, I'll also,
I think,
go ahead.
The thing is that, you know, I work with cycles in lots of ways. Like the menstrual cycle, the seasons of the year, more recently, astrological cycles as well. So I always feel like I'm in a different place anyway. So even if I'm here in the same room all the time, I'm always moving through these different cycles, and I know very intimately how they affect me.
So it's never the same anyway.
So it's never the same. I'm always like, oh, that's when I'm going to be most outgoing, most chatty. This is when I'm not going to want to people at all. This is when I want to hyper focus on, you know, getting something done. This is when I want to Netflix, you know. So
I think we can't emphasize enough how important it is for people to figure this shit out for themselves, right? Instead of buying into, whether you're even, you know, if you don't have a menstrual cycle, just buying into that whole bro myth of, oh, what is it, the miracle morning or whatever, and we all have to get up at 4 a.m. start with a cold bath, etc., etc. Yeah, if you love that shit, by all means do it. I'm a morning person. 4 a.m. is a bit too much for me, but I'll happily wake up at 5:30 and be like, cheery.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people who shouldn't want this, right? Because their bodies just work in different ways. And to work against your body is just, it's a lot of work. Right?
It really is. So a good example of this is at the moment, like I know that once we're in Aries season, so like end of March into April, it's my resetting month.
Mm-hmm.
It's when, even with the looming deadline, I don't want to work. I could work because I can coach myself into anything I want to, for sure. But it's like, yes, I could do that effort, but it's kind of going to be like going against myself and like moving through treacle.
Yes.
So why not just not do that right now and do other things and spend more time outside and hang out with my family. It's been the Easter break, all of those things, and then I know in over the course of the next week I'm going to be ready to go, because this happens every year very very predictably. So because I know that, then that means I can just be in this time and use it and then just hit the ground running.
Exactly. Instead of being in a should, like, oh, I'm doing this, but actually I should be yada, 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 then actually not having, really being present with what you're doing. Because in the back of your head, you're like, but actually I should be working on my project. And that makes everything horrible. In addition to the energy drain. So and
I think it's all those shoulds,
yes,
that can come up, and I think that's the thing to watch for, because like because I don't know how I'm going to feel like a lot of the time, and there's been it happens less often now, but times where I just lose my verbal skills altogether and I can't talk. So I don't necessarily want to plan a launch in the business that's about me doing a webinar or like, things like that. If I'm not close enough to it to be able to confidently say
it's going to be fine.
Yes or no. Whereas now I'm actually in a place where I'm like, oh, well, who cares if I can't do it? I just send an email saying I'm not doing it. I'll let you know when I am.
Love it. And that's the other thing I think of kind of maturing in your business. Because you've already had so many screw ups. Like, I'm not saying you have, I for sure have, right? I've made so many mistakes and that really wasn't a problem ever, right? In the grand scheme of things. Seriously.
Yeah. But it's like, I've been reviewing our like company manual recently. I was like, oh man, when I first wrote this, I apparently thought we should have something called all hands meetings every week.
Right.
I thought we should do this. I'm like, no, it's our business, because it is designed to suit me and actually everyone that works on the team. Is we don't have meetings. We very rarely have meetings. It's like once in a while, like all of us or a significant number of us. Oh no, it's like voice notes. Everything is well documented. There's systems, there's processes, that's all there. And I only hire people who are self-sufficient and don't require a lot of feedback and contact, and communication like that. Yeah.
It's interesting because the earlier podcast interview I did like last week with Naomi Dunford, she said, hire for relationship skills, hire someone married almost, right? Like, and like the way they want to develop themselves, how smart they are, etc., etc. If they're smart, they can learn any skill, right? Any software, anything they need to be able to learn, they will do that like in no time. But that's not what you want to hire for.
Yes. And also another great recommendation that you gave me a while back was, you told me about I think they're a tech company in America,
Ultranauts. They're
Ultranauts.
amazing. Yes.
And you told me about the biodexes that each employee is invited to create. And now we have our version of that in my business, where everyone is like a user manual for each person.
Yes. So good. Right. And for the people who are like, what the hell are you talking about? Ultranauts hires, I think, 75% neurodivergent people. And everybody has like a little bio which says, okay, these are the ways you can contact me. Right. Some people may be nonverbal, so it's going to be chat, but some people may be verbal, but still not. Phone calls may not be their forte or their preferred mode of communicating. So it's all in there. And there's never any confusion about like, oh my God, why is this person not emailing me back? Well, that's because in their manual it says, well, I don't actually read my email, send me WhatsApp or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
And
we have no email in my business. I mean, some of the team members email each other, but you're not getting an email from me. So just don't.
I think I have also never had an email from you. I email you, but I never.
Don't get a reply. Oh, so you're not the only one. Everyone.
So good. No, but we're still. And the thing is, maybe some people are going to think like, how the hell do you run a business like that? Listen, we're still doing this podcast, right? Yeah. Even though Maisie does not send emails, it's still happening. So it can totally work. Yeah.
It can. And that's just the beauty of, I think it's just, not making ourselves wrong for how we are. Like, don't make you the problem.
Exactly. Right. For how you're wired, just accept and embrace the way you're wired instead of trying to change it to fit a certain idea of how you should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything else you want to share? Say,
oh my gosh, I could go on forever about all sorts of other things.
We can always do another one.
But no, I think that's it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. It's been just a delight.
Likewise. Hope to speak to you again soon.